Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning to discuss the situation with responsible tourism in India. India is rapidly becoming the leading destination in the world for responsible tourism. It's an exciting place to see responsible tourism develop because it has so many opportunities to benefit the wonderful diversity that India has, both local communities, wildlife, and the very rich and diverse cultural heritage. It's no accident that India uses the strapline, Incredible India. It is indeed an incredible country. So we're going to hear this morning from three quite different states in some ways. We're going to hear from Madhya Pradesh, from Kerala, and from Maharashtra. And we're also going to hear Vinod Zuzli, who's here from speaking on behalf of the national position. He's a former joint secretary in the Ministry of Tourism in Delhi, recently retired, but I must say looking younger every time I see you, Vinod. You're clearly, retirement is suiting you. But I wanted to start, Rani, if I may, with Kerala, because it was in Kerala in 2008 that one of your predecessors, Dr. Venu, invited us to run a conference on responsible tourism in destinations. Which was, for me, a unique conference in the sense there was actually a demonstration against us even holding the conference in Kerala. I'm pleased to say that that kind of doubt about what we were doing has now, I think, passed. But certainly there was a lot of concern in Kerala back in 2008 that the place was being used by tourism and that local communities were not benefiting very much. But I wondered, Rani, if you'd like to say something about the way responsible tourism has developed in Kerala since 2008.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Harold Goodwin. It was a long journey for us from 2008 to 2020. When we are here in 2020, the world has changed completely. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, our lifestyle has changed. The way we are holding the meetings have changed. We are meeting online. WTM is being conducted online, and we are meeting online. In 2008, when Mr. Harold Goodwin introduced this idea of responsible tourism, Kerala Tourism found that it was a very innovative idea, and we wanted to introduce it into Kerala. And for that, we started with 4 destinations in the beginning, and later on we added 3 more destinations. And in 2017, after 10 years, in 2017, the government of Kerala has decided to form the Responsible Tourism Mission. And then it was after that, the RT movement gained momentum. And now when we are in 2020, what we find is that we have around 20,000 RT units. We have around 0.1 million beneficiaries, direct and indirect beneficiaries out of this responsible tourism. And the tourism stakeholders also have started accepting this new concept, which was introduced in 2008. And here, if I don't mention the name of Mr. Rupesh Kumar, he is the state coordinator of Responsible Tourism Mission in Kerala. He has been working on this just like Mr. Harold Goodwin is working on the responsible tourism. Mr. Rupesh Kumar has been working on this from 2007 onwards, 2008 onwards, and he is the state mission coordinator. And this has garnered, or this has attracted so many awards for the responsible tourism initiatives in Kerala. And I would like to thank WTM for the latest award for the RT mission, for the responsible tourism mission in Kerala. It is actually the highly commended award, and the award was for an innovative idea which was introduced by Responsible Tourism Mission. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the RT mission introduced work at home videos, storytelling videos and audios, and that was a new interest which was developed under the meaningful connections which WTM found. And this movement, what we found that after developing the RT mission, we were able to bring in capacity building for the responsible tourism initiatives, for the responsible tourism units. We were able to bring market linkage with the hotels and resorts for the produce that the units are producing. And above all, we were able to develop a technology intervention into the RT initiative. The first one was we developed a human resource directory. We have lots of workers in this field like plumbers, electricians, technicians. So what we did was we formed a human resource directory and networked all these people so that they can be connected to the hotels and resorts. The second thing is that we developed an art and culture forum. We have lots of artists in the local field. They are contacting the hotels and resorts for performances. And through this art and culture forum, we have networked lots of artists into this network so that they can get connected with the hotels and resorts. The third one is there are lots of units producing the local produce. Similarly, there are people who are making souvenirs and handicrafts. And all these people are networked under the Kerala RT network. And the last one is the Ethnic Cuisine project. Under this network, lots of families, lots of women are coming forward under the Ethnic Cuisine project to offer the tourists coming to have an experience of the ethnic cuisine of Kerala. And one more thing I would like to say about this, during this journey of responsible tourism over a period of 12 to 13 years, we have developed around 140 responsible tourism packages, village life experience packages, festival packages, culture experience packages, native experience packages, similarly lots of packages which the tourists can undertake, or tourists can go through this package, can avail of these packages and get a first-hand experience of the culture of Kerala, of what Kerala has got to offer. The tourists can go back with a memory of a nice experience of visiting Kerala.
Thank you very much, Rani. I omitted to say that you're the Secretary of Tourism in Kerala, working for the state government. A couple of things which I think are unusual about Kerala in terms of the way you've developed responsible tourism, and given that we have an international audience, I just want to remind you of these, because in some ways in Kerala you take them very much for granted. The one thing was the development of these units, these production units in the rural areas, which have very successfully managed to get groups of small farmers essentially to work together to produce the consumables for the hotels, not only fruit and vegetables, but some limited amounts of meat and quite a lot of soft furnishings, which has only been possible because of those production units which have been created in Kerala. And then the village life experiences, which I think are an extraordinary example of enabling the tourist to experience elements of village life without being too intrusive, and to equalize to some degree the relationship between the host and the guest. I think for me, those are two really standout, extraordinary things which have been achieved in Kerala and which you should get more recognition for. But the other thing I wanted to say is that you uniquely, in my experience, there may be other examples, but I don't know of any. Right from the beginning, Kerala decided that it would experiment. So that initially the effort was made in 4 different villages, and they were done differently in each village. And one initiative was particularly successful in Kumarakoram, and really that you then rolled that out slowly across the whole state. And unfortunately, we don't see that approach often enough, I think, in developing responsible tourism, actually testing out the ideas and seeing what works and what doesn't and why. Do you think that's a fair comment on what's been achieved in Kerala, Rani?
Yeah, right, Mr. Harold Goodwin. Kumaragam was one of the first destinations we identified to introduce responsible tourism, and it became a successful model, of course. And what is the reason behind the success of Kumaragam RT is that the local community, the hotels, the resorts, the tourism stakeholders, the local body, the panchayats, everybody came together and they worked as a team. And especially under the Responsible Tourism Initiative of the Government of Kerala, all of them came together so that it became a success model, and it has won many awards, national and international.
The other thing I'd add, and then I promise we will move on to Madhya Pradesh. The other thing that was extraordinary for me was in a meeting with your minister, being asked whether we could prove that we'd actually benefited the community in Kumarakoram. And as a result of that, Rupesh, with a team of people, organized almost a census, really, visiting every household to ask what the benefits have been. And that was an extraordinary experience for me, both in terms of the commitment of the minister that it should actually benefit people at the household level, which was frankly a breath of fresh air to what I hear many places around the world. But then my fear, maybe we were going to do this research and it wasn't going to be very good. But in fact, it turned out to be quite amazing, because one of the things that's happened in Kerala is that it isn't the whole household that becomes dependent. It's really normally one member of the household gets an additional income from tourism. So we've avoided the real danger of creating dependency, which for me is a fundamentally important thing about developing responsible tourism. It's not increasing people's vulnerability by making them entirely dependent on tourism. I think that's worked really well in Kerala.
Definitely, Mr. Harold Goodwin. I still remember you coming and meeting our minister, and you have visited Kerala before also. And as you said, the people in Kumaragam, the local people in Kumaragam, after the census or after the research that has been done there, they have accepted that this is responsible tourism is beneficial for them. And what we found is that actually all these self-help groups of people, most of them are women. So that means the women are getting economically empowered. The responsible tourism, what we always see is that create a better place to live in, create a better place to visit and enjoy. So that is the policy. In 2019 also, our government has brought out a new tourism policy. And the base of this tourism policy is responsible tourism. That is because we have understood that this is beneficial for the people and we need to spread it across almost all the other destinations. So what we are rightly now engaged in is that spread it across the different destinations in Kerala. And not only that, we have gone one step ahead. We have introduced a new program by which the local bodies of the Grama Panchayats, they actually discuss about the tourism projects in their destinations. They actually discuss what are the issues there, what are the projects to be implemented there, and they come up with new projects. So this is the next step actually RT Mission is going into.
Thanks very much, Rani. You'd be interested to know we are beginning to get questions coming through on the chat. So if you're out there in the audience and you've got questions you'd like to ask, please do send those questions in. I could turn now to Madhya Pradesh and Sonia Meena, who is an additional managing director for the Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board, which is part of the government of Madhya Pradesh. Sonia, we've not actually met before, but thank you very much for joining me on this panel today. You would not be able to imagine the pleasure and joy that I experienced when I heard that Madhya Pradesh was talking with Rupesh Kumar and people in Kerala about developing a strategy appropriate for Madhya Pradesh. It will never be the same as the one in Kerala, as it always needs to reflect the local circumstances. But it's been very exciting working with some of your colleagues over the last few months and watching the development of the policy. Would you like to explain what Madhya Pradesh is planning to do?
Thank you, Harold. We are delighted to be a part of this panel discussion. Let me first give you an introduction about the destination that Madhya Pradesh is. We are popularly known as the heart of incredible India because of the geographical location of the state, which is located in the center of the country. Not only because of its physical location, but also because of everything that it has to offer. It really is a microcosm of all segments of tourism offerings and attractions in the country, whether it's wildlife and nature, whether it's heritage, pilgrimage, or leisure. Madhya Pradesh is home to 3 World Heritage Sites, and 2 others are on the tentative list. We have also been crowned as the tiger state of the country in 2019, with the highest number of tigers in the country at 526, and about 32% of the land area of Madhya Pradesh is covered by forests. We are home to 11 national parks and 24 wildlife sanctuaries. In the past 10 years, we have seen a threefold increase in the total tourist arrivals in the state, which today stand at 89 million. We rank at number 7 in the country in terms of domestic tourist arrivals. And as far as inbound tourists are concerned, we are at number 14 with 0.4 million tourist arrivals. If we look at the cultural heritage of Madhya Pradesh and the demographic aspects, 72% of our population lives in the rural areas, and 21% of our population is composed of tribes. We have 46 notified tribes, which are all which possess a rich treasure of culture and traditional knowledge and wisdom. It is against this background that the state has formulated its tourism policy in 2016. And I would like to read out the vision that is a part of this tourism policy. The vision is to promote such balanced and sustainable tourism, which enables socio-economic development, generates employment opportunities, and establishes Madhya Pradesh as a destination that provides a complete tourism experience. Taking further from this vision document, we have drafted the responsible tourism policy this year. We have entered into a MOU with the Kerala Responsible Tourism Mission, and we are also in the process of entering into a MOU with your good self, the International Center for Responsible Tourism. We all know that the push for responsible tourism in today's time has come from the kind of environmental degradation, the commercialization, and the disruption in the way of life of host communities that we have seen in popular tourist destinations across the country as well as the world. And while this may guarantee increased tourist arrivals in the short term and swift economic development, ensuring long-term sustainability and protecting the livelihoods of the communities requires that we incorporate these values and strategies for responsible tourism at the initial stages of policy and action itself. And this is a recognition and this is an understanding that we are trying to work with in Madhya Pradesh. To this end, we have a dedicated team, a passionate team, which has been put in place in the Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board and who have worked on several initiatives which are at different levels of implementation and different levels of showing results. One of these initiatives is the Rural Tourism Project, under which we are planning to identify 100 villages throughout the state. Work has already started in 53 villages, where the villagers are being mobilized, the community is being mobilized to set up homestays. They are being trained and oriented towards running these homestays, as well as providing authentic cultural and rural experiences to the tourists. In addition to this, financial support and assistance is also being provided to these beneficiaries for construction of infrastructure. This will ensure that the socio-economic benefits of tourism, which so far we have been talking in terms of trickling down to the local people, will reach directly to them as they become the primary stakeholder as far as the ownership, the operation, the management, and the conservation and preservation of these various tourism products is concerned. We are also, it has always been the positive effect of rural tourism that the traditional arts and craft forms get a fillip, they get the required conservation attention, and the new generation, which we increasingly see is not taking up traditional occupations, acquires a sense of identity, acquires a sense of pride and confidence, and people go back to these traditional occupations as well. Since we know that experiential tourism is the buzzword in today's travel, especially in a post-COVID scenario, increasingly people are going back to the concepts of healthy living and wellness. Rural tourism provides an opportunity to connect with nature and to also enjoy the warmth and hospitality of the rural population. So not just a rural and an authentic cultural experience, which is grounded and which is connected with nature, We are also incorporating an element of education and awareness through these projects. So we have entered into a partnership with a private organization called the Global Himalayan Expedition, and also the International Astronomical Union, to set up an astropark in one of our destinations, making use of the resource of the dark night skies in the villages without any light pollution. And this would be not only a unique attraction, it will also serve to educate young people, educate students who we hope will be one of our important and major clientele. Agri-tourism is again another, I think, dimension which is very closely related to rural tourism, where people will get a hands-on experience of farming, of cooking, of visiting organic farms, etc. So agri-tourism would be one of the related dimensions of rural tourism. Another concern for us, having listed out a number of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries that are there in the state, would be the solid and liquid waste management around these various national parks. There's a lot of, we all know that there is an increased generation of plastic waste, reducing resource consumption, and also promoting the reuse and the recycle of the waste, the reuse and the recycling of the waste so generated is a project that we have already started working on. And we would like to take up this project through the involvement of the local community, the private stakeholders who have their lodges, who have their hotels, who have their transportation units in and around these national parks. So that's another project that we are working on. Another very ambitious project that we are working on, where UN Women is a technical partner with Madhya Pradesh Tourism Board, is creating safe tourism destinations for women, for solo travelers, for group women travelers. The plan for this that we have proposed is that we are going to increase the presence of women in these public spaces, so that women travelers feel more confident, they feel more comfortable. The acceptability for any kind of harassment or violence against women gets reduced. And this will also lead to the empowerment of women in these areas as they become drivers, they become shopkeepers, they become street vendors, they become tourist guides. And work towards this end has already started in one of our tourist destinations called Orcha, where we have trained a number of women who run e-rickshaws and provide a form of internally commuting within the small town of Orcha for the tourists and travelers here. Another project that we have been working on, and we'll soon be receiving the results of the same, is doing an accessibility audit in order to provide access, smooth access to differently abled tourists and travelers. This also happens to be one of the components of the Cape Town Declaration on Responsible Tourism, where we talk about how differently abled travelers should be also able to enjoy, should also be able to learn and explore unhindered in tourist sites and monuments. So we're conducting this accessibility audit through an established private agency which works in the sector of the differently abled in 8 destinations in the state, covering about 30 monuments. So I think for now, I will limit myself to these major projects that we are undertaking. And
thank you very much indeed, Sonia. One of the, in a way, what you've had to say demonstrates the breadth of the responsible tourism agenda. And I think what both Kerala and Madhya Pradesh have in common is that you've looked at what the problems are around tourism and the other problems in your states, and thought hard about what tourism can do to improve those things, whether it's dealing with pollution or empowering women. You've taken up the issues which arise. And I'm going to come back later, I think, this morning to talk about the role of the Panchayat in that process, because I suspect that they're quite important in that. But one of the things that also came out of what you said is that critical question of whether a place, a community, a national park is going to be used by tourism, or whether it's going to use tourism to benefit conservation, the local community, the role of women in society. And I think that's the many ways, that's one of the very fundamental questions about responsible tourism, about what it's for. But if we could move on now to Maharashtra, and Valsa Singh, who's here from Maharashtra. She's the Principal Secretary Tourism for the government in Maharashtra, and we've not met before. I have to tell you, Valsa, that we've had 3 people from the floor saying how wonderful it is that you're on the panel. But I have to tell you, with very high expectations now, that Maharashtra is going to adopt responsible tourism. I think you've perhaps unwittingly made an announcement today without even speaking, because clearly your mere presence on the panel has created a lot of expectation that responsible tourism will be developed in Maharashtra, which I must say would excite me if that is happening at the moment. But also, I won't put words into your mouth. Those genuinely are questions, and I can prove it afterwards if you doubt me. Where do you see tourism in Maharashtra developing now?
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin, for first having me in the panel and for all the good words. And I really have to compliment Rani for the excellent work which Kerala has been doing, and we'll be very happy to share the best practices of Kerala as well. And quite coincidentally, Kumarakam, where the responsible tourism actually grew, happens to be my paternal grandfather's hometown. So I do have, an emotional bonding to tourism as well.
Valsa, could I just say, everyone listening must realize that India is actually a very small country.
So that's true. And even Sonia, I am quite excited, to work together with her too on the excellent initiative they have taken. And coming back to Maharashtra, it means big nation. It's a country in itself, as big as any other country in Europe would be, though it's only a state as far as India is concerned. So the challenges here are different. It's a very diverse state. It has a beautiful coastline. It has the mountains, the Western Ghats. It has 7 World Heritage sites. It has natural parks, tiger reserves, the famous Tadoba Reserve. It has the Ajanta Ellora caves. And I would say the USP of Maharashtra are the beautiful forts. We have almost 300 forts in Maharashtra, and some of them are sea forts, actual forts built in the sea. I mean, they're outstanding architectural marvels. This is just an introduction of Maharashtra, and many people know Mumbai, but not Maharashtra. Mumbai is the capital of Maharashtra, but Maharashtra is not just Mumbai. There's a big wide world outside Mumbai, which is the real Maharashtra. Mumbai is the home of films, home of Bollywood. It's the home of Indian finance. It's the home of events, a plethora of names. But I would say the real Maharashtra lives outside Mumbai. Coming back to responsible tourism, Maharashtra has been following responsible tourism for over a decade, albeit under a different name. We may not have called it responsible tourism. It could have gone under the name of rural tourism. It could have gone under the name of sustainable tourism or farm tourism. But when I hear my colleagues speaking, the kind of philosophy that is behind the responsible tourism mission is exactly what has gone in the Maharashtra's farm tourism packages or the policy. Our tourism policy has laid a lot of emphasis on how to develop communities, how to develop the local economy, how to get into women empowerment through tourism. And the new agro-tourism policy launched by the state government recently puts this entire objectives into a framework. Agro-tourism policy has more about experiential tourism, how to end farm stays, from the farm to the table, how to encourage the product, how the sale of products. It encompasses not only agriculture, entire horticulture, the whole, even the vineyards, the Nashik vineyard. I mean, they're all coming under the farm tourism umbrella. So we encourage tourists to go stay there, be a part of the farming techniques, to live the life of a villager, to enjoy life as a tourist, life as a farmer. We've also made it mandatory for schools and colleges to to do their educational trips to these farm tourism units. They're also incentivized by the government through many of the policy directions. It's the consumer gas and many other items are subsidized for all these farm tourism units. Apart from this agro-tourism, we also have a very, very strong policy of encouraging bed and breakfast, which I also think is one of the backbone of experiential tourism, because customer experience in these units can be as exciting as you could have it. And despite not having a tag or a tagline to the package, we have also walked away with a lot of awards in the World Responsible Tourism missions. Just wanted to mention a couple of them from Mumbai. One is No Footprints. It won in 2017. Then we have the Farm of Happiness, which also won again, I think, the gold medal in 2017. We have the reality tours. Then we have the village ways and grassroots journey. These are all private entrepreneurs who are into different modes of responsible tourism. And another example, which many people may know, is the Vrindavan Eco Village. This is, I would say, the most befitting example of a responsible tourism unit. It's about 2 hours from Mumbai, and it shows you probably the best case study of how responsible tourism should be. It is a small eco village run by the ISKCON group, the Hare Krishna group, and it's a befitting example on what are the do's and what are the don'ts. And they've also, I think, got the gold medal 2 years ago in the World Responsible Tourism category. So these are some of the activities which have already done, but now that I've heard my two colleagues, it will be very exciting to tie up with them and to take this to bigger level, especially some of the tie-ups which Ani spoke about arts and culture, about cuisine, about the data bank of the local manpower being shared, so that they could all be used by the hotels or the other resorts or other units which are interested in getting into this space. We have also recently launched two very big initiatives in tourism as such. One is the introduction of an ease of doing business to set up an investment in tourism here. We have brought down the number of licenses from 70 to 10 now, and its application numbers have also come down to 8, and all are online. So that is just to sort of encourage more investment. And in the post-COVID regime, the government has also taken a stand to declare tourism as an industry here. So it's becoming, the operating costs are going to come down. And I think I can channelize these newfound interests into more and more modes of responsible tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Valsa. And you're absolutely right. We have had a lot of winners from your state in the Responsible Tourism Awards, as we have from Kerala and Madhya Pradesh. It is an extraordinary richness of private sector offerings. One of the ones which is still unusual around the world in terms of the type of development is what's happening around your big cities with the development of agri-tourism experiences, which are really designed mainly for the domestic market. But if as an international visitor you get the opportunity to visit, they are really amazing. But obviously people who have moved from rural areas into the cities want to be able to take their children back to see what village life is like, because it's such an important part of the cultures of India. So that's been, for me, a really interesting development over the last 15 years. And obviously with a major centre like Mumbai, you see the development of a lot of these kinds of offers, and it's happening around the computer centres as well in India. I think it's a really exciting development, and that is all about the experience for the children of families who have historically lived in rural areas but now moved into cities. Vinod, can we come now to the national position? You and I have known each other, I think the first time I met you was when you decided you wanted to speak on one of the panels on the floor at WTM in London, which was a real breath of fresh air to have someone of your eminence wanting to do that. And I must say you were very well received on that occasion. Vinod, as I've said to you before, so we did an interview together not that long ago, I was really excited to see the principles from Cape Town come through into the new national strategy for India. It's not yet passed, but I hope they're going to stay in there through the review process. But would you like just to say something about where you see responsible tourism going at the national level? You were previously a joint secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, and as I said earlier, you retired not that long ago. And are still actively working on responsible tourism in a number of ways. But could you give us a sense of where you think India is at nationally, with both the national policy and perhaps a bit of a national overview about what's happening around these principles of responsible tourism in incredible India?
Thanks, Errol, for all the good words. Well, if I speak on the national level, India, the responsible tourism is taking deeper roots in India. Thanks to the efforts by the government, central government, state governments, community, industry, and of course the travelers. And also the global environment, which is catalyzing, the initiative of responsible tourism all over the world. India, though, has a long way to go, but I can say that the lessons learned from COVID pandemic would certainly accelerate the RT movement in the country. And the good news is that in the midst of COVID, I mean, hats off to the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, that they have come out with a policy draft which to a very large extent addresses the issue of sustainable tourism and responsible tourism. And how does it do? Let me just touch upon in four manners. Number one, what is the important place that responsible tourism has got in the new policy structure? If you see the vision, the government talks in the policy about that India will be one of the topmost destinations for sustainable and responsible tourism. If you see the key pillars, it says that sustainable tourism and responsible tourism will be overarching all the 9 key pillars. And those 9 key pillars, Harold, they cover almost everything from connectivity to destination planning, to investment, to promotion, to marketing, and diversifying tourism products and all. So it says that RT will be embedded in each and every key pillar that has been envisaged in the policy. Then if you move to the mission objectives, the mission objectives summarize like this, that post-COVID, and it takes into account what is going to happen in the new normal. It says that post-COVID, the policy will help in accelerating the growth of inbound and domestic tourism in a responsible manner. Now, mind you, the word in a responsible manner, the rider speaks volumes about the government's intentions in the new policy to take responsible tourism initiative forward. Even among the key pillars, if you see some of them, like for example, in seamless connectivity, it talks about eco-friendly transport, it talks about dispersal of air traffic. If you see destination planning, this is one of its kind. In fact, this is a very new concept, and I would request the three state secretaries, and of course Sonia will also become Secretary Tourism very soon. So my point is that it has made certain rules of governance, apex level, state level, and the destination level. So the model of destination governance, which has been incorporated in the new policy of Government of India, is really laudable and appreciable, that it takes care of the sustainability and the. How does it? Let me just give some points. In destination planning, it says that there will be a master planning and the community participation will be there in the planning. If you say in terms of under destination management, it says a very unique thing. It says it is not going to be PPP, just the public-private participation. It is going to be PPC approach. And what is PPC approach? Public, private, and community participation. Now, this is a new concept which I think takes care of the RT aspect as well. Then in terms of diversification pillar, it says we will go for community participation, we will go for sustained and equitable growth, and we will have product-specific roadmap for ecotourism. So this has been highlighted in the another pillar. Another key pillar is marketing, and it takes care of the social awareness campaign. It talks about taking care of the cleanliness, taking care of hygiene, taking care of women's safety, and taking care of responsible traveling. And in quality assurance pillar, it mentions about adhering to the code of ethics and for sound environmental practices. The second part I would like to mention is there are certain specific responsible tourism action points and broad principles. And what are those principles? Very important. One, the government says that responsible tourism is the responsibility of all stakeholders for achieving the sustainability. So it is not that only government and some other stakeholders will be responsible, all stakeholders. That is point one. The second thing is that the destination management has to be made responsible. And the policy, the thought behind this making destination as a very important key focal point is that it says that all economic, social, and environmental impacts of tourism are felt at the destination. So they have to be managed responsibly. The next thing that it talks about as a guideline is that the local policy and guidelines are very important. They are not talking of the state level or the district level. It says that in most of the time, it is seen that the stakeholders and destinations, their requirements, they don't match. And therefore, there is a need to make local policies with regard to responsible tourism also and sit with all the stakeholders at the local level. The next point as a guideline is that vocal for local. I mean, this is a slogan which our Honorable Prime Minister had coined in the light of COVID experiences. But I would stress on this particular point from the sustainability and responsibility tourism point of view, in the sense that it talks about it's part of policy. It talks about local community playing a role, talks about local products, talks about local participation, talks about local culture, connecting with local people, and rebuilding the pride and confidence of the local people and building local capacity. So these are, Harold, the key action points which the government has incorporated in the policy. Another one or two important guideline or key action point which the policy mentions is regarding the incentivization and incentivization for compliance of the RT framework. It also talks about sensitization of tourists, and it also talks about assessment of carrying capacities of destination in order to prevent over-tourism. So I would say that's a very comprehensively, it covers most of the responsible tourism aspects which you are all looking at.
So Vinod, it sounds to me as though what we're looking at is a really broad-ranging commitment at the national level, assuming that this policy goes through. Absolutely. I think it will. We're going to have a very broad commitment to all the different aspects of responsible tourism that were identified in the original Cape Town Declaration.
Absolutely.
I guess the big question, and this is the big question, will it be rolled out across India, or will it rely on the commitment of individual states and cities to drive this agenda forward? What's your take on India as a whole? And then perhaps we'll go back around the panel and get a view.
Harold, good you asked this question. In fact, the policy has taken cognizance of this aspect also, that it should not just become a national priority at the national level and it should not percolate it down. So they have come out with a structural change in the governance pattern also. For example, at the union government level, they have given certain responsibilities to certain proposed bodies. For example, the Ministry of Tourism will now have a National Tourism Advisory Board in which the Honorable Minister of Tourism will be the chairperson. All the state ministers of tourism of the state will be part of that. Then there will be an inter-ministerial coordination committee. This is basically to coordinate with ministries. Then you will have task forces. We'll have a National Tourism Authority, which will be an executive body. So that means at the national level, in order to implement this policy, and of course, RT initiative is part of the policy, they have also given a structural framework. And not just that, the second most important thing, how the institutional linkages are strengthened. And for that, as I had mentioned, there are three levels. Apex level, of course, the ministry and with all these accessories. The second is the state level. And the ministry, the policy has envisaged that even the state governments should have a state tourism board. They should have an interdepartmental coordination committee on tourism. They should have state task forces as well. And right from state to the destination level. And destination level, in very brief manner, I will mention that it conceives of an idea in which the district collector or the commissioner will be the chairperson of the DMO. And there will be a CEO who will be from the private sector. And of course, the community will be involved in planning. So this institutional linkages, which the ministry has envisaged in the policy, is going to make it pan-India. It is not going to be in patches as it has been happening all these years. So Harold, I have a very firm commitment and I'm quite confident that if all the state governments, they also make responsible tourism initiative as part of the policy, as Valsa had mentioned, and of course Kerala is already there. In all the state policies, we need to bring in all those portion of the importance of responsible tourism into their state policies. And today, most of the state governments are making the state policies. So it is time that these state governments are, basically they are called upon to bring in the RT initiative and sustainability into their policy in a bigger manner. So I think the effort of the government of India in terms of the new policy is, of course, to bring it pan-India. And that is the job of the ministry also. But how much coordination, how much cooperation they are going to get from the state government, that depends on time. But yes, most of the states are also doing taking initiatives on their own. So we need to bring them together with a common guideline. And let me also tell you, with COVID happening, I mean, this is my personal experience and everyone has seen it. You see, India has been a country where COVID has brought the kind of discipline that was seen amongst Indians. Can you imagine 1,300 million people just at the call of the Honorable Prime Minister and the Union government? There was a complete lockdown. And this shows how responsible the Indians are. I mean, unlike many places where people came out to the streets protesting against wearing of masks and lifting of lockdown, but never once it happened in India. Now it shows people are inherently, they are responsible towards the duty, especially when there is a crisis. So I feel that responsibility tourism has also emerged out of a crisis. And therefore, Indians, once they are made aware through a campaign, once they are made aware of the fallout of the responsible tourism through what can happen if it is not followed, they are certainly going to unify, and it is not going to matter whether it happens in Rajasthan or whether it happens in Gujarat. I think all states would be in a position to garner support towards responsible tourism.
Thank you for that. Let's come back now to the states, because you'll be amused, I think, that one of the questions I've been asked is whether the emerging tourism superpowers like India are going to be the organizations which create responsible tourism as an international model. I hope the questioner is right, but India is clearly now a superpower in tourism. I have no doubt about that. One of the things that's clear from what you're saying, Vinod, I think, is that what used to be primarily a marketing function in the DMO, the management function is becoming more and more important. And Ronnie, could I come to you first to kind of reflect on what difference you think this change in national policy will make for Kerala?
Thank you, Mr. Harold. I think it's a very welcome step from the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, to bring out this national tourism policy with sustainable and responsible tourism as the overarching theme. And just like Mr. Vinod Suchi had mentioned, he was talking about the several pillars on which this policy is going to be based. It's of course a national policy, but at the field level, I think at the implementation level, the states have to implement this policy. And for Kerala, I had already mentioned, the government of Kerala has already brought out the Kerala tourism policy, which is based on responsible tourism. And we are already working on the field from 2008 onwards. But whatever policy that we are bringing out, I would say that to see a successful model like Kumaragam in Kerala, the practical approach would be for all the stakeholders, all the tourism stakeholders, the local community, the local bodies, the tourism hoteliers like tour operators, hotels and resorts, and the government of the state concerned, everybody should come together. Then only this will become a successful model. I can just tell you one example. In Kumaragam, actually, next to Kumaragam, we have the Aimanam Panchayat. We have, after this initiating the responsible tourism initiatives, we had gone on to declaring a village as a model RT village. We have listed out certain criteria for that village to become a model RT village, which would give the local community benefits from the tourism activities which is happening in that place. And recently, after initiating lots of new activities in that village, the government has declared Aimanam as the model RT village in Kerala. So that is a next step forward, declaring a village as a model RT village. Similarly, all these people should come together to make it a successful model.
Thanks very much, Rani. What seems to me to be fundamentally important is that you can have whatever theory you'd like about the different stakeholders working together, but actually where it happens is on the ground, and that's often at the panchayat level. It's really very local. Yes. That those village life experiences, those producer groups, those experiences of village life, or the experience of a quarter in a city, it's actually at the very local level that those relationships need to be made. Have I got that right, Sonia? Is that the way it's going to be pursued in Madhya Pradesh? Is that going to be the way forward, to bring people together at that very local level where the tourism actually happens?
Definitely. And the focus of all the initiatives that we are undertaking is involving the community, as I said earlier, as a primary stakeholder, ensuring that they are the ones who drive these initiatives, and they are the ones who benefit from these initiatives. And indeed, we will have to form, as part of our plan to develop rural tourism in the state, the plan is that through the local body, which are called panchayats, we plan to have a tourism committee, which is going to operate, which is going to manage, which is going to do the conflict resolution in case something like that comes up, which is going to do the marketing in a collective manner for the whole village. So tourism committees, which have all the stakeholders at the village level as members, and also the elected representatives as members of this committee, will be very critical in the management and in taking forward the rural tourism idea that we are planning. The draft national tourism policy, which has been circulated to all the states, also talks about district level tourism promotion councils. It also talks about DMOs, which Zutshi sir was just mentioning. And in Madhya Pradesh, we already have a district tourism promotion council. It's a concept that, in fact, incidentally, we have taken from Kerala, and which has members who are elected representatives. It has members who are part of the local district level administration. And it really has to be a decentralized approach, because these are the people at the cutting edge level who have to deal with an issue which comes up, and also know the pulse of the people and the various challenges and the various, even the USPs, even the good things that are available on the ground and which can be developed and which can be promoted and taken forward. So the plan that we have and the approach that we are going to adopt is definitely to involve the community in a big way, to also sensitize and also to raise awareness and educate our very own authorities, our very own departments. Because this is a relatively new concept in a state like Madhya Pradesh, where we are still at a very early stage of developing tourism, of promoting tourism, getting more tourists, developing new products and services. The idea of responsible tourism is going a step ahead and talking about environmental protection, talking about conserving the natural and cultural heritage of the state. So we have to work within the government in order to bring all the departments on the same page in terms of understanding responsible tourism. And we also have to work between the private government and the private sector, the community, as also educating the traveler. I think creating travelers who are discerning, who are culturally enlightened, who are environmentally sensitive is also going to be a big part of ensuring that we are able to successfully implement this project and this mission in the destinations.
I think absolutely, Sonia. And I think one of the big successes in Kerala, and I'm sure it will happen in Madhya Pradesh too, is that the private sector, through the hotels and the tour operators, has come on board to help people to purchase the village life experiences and the other experiences which really benefit the local community. Valsa, if I could just change the question slightly for you. I mean, one of the big successes, I think, in Kerala, and I can see it coming in Madhya Pradesh, is the opportunity to get the different levels of government to work together. That kind of notion of joined up government, where different departments within the administration and different layers of government work together to make the change happen. Is that something which you think will work in Maharashtra too?
I don't think that could be the situation in Maharashtra. Maharashtra, I think the success of any policy would depends mostly on the private sector involvement in it. The government's role is quite limited to only the formulation policies and maybe try and publicize it, try and talk about it, and talk about the incentives on a marketing effect. The actual work per se here is mostly for the private sector, and we are very lucky to have a very, very strong private sector involvement in tourism here. As since you've been visiting India, you would know that the strengths of tourism is very different in every state.
Yes.
While some state is a very strong network, in some other states it probably doesn't come in the top 10 priority sectors. So it all depends on the strengths and weaknesses of each state. While in Maharashtra, I would say it is a strong sector, but that is thanks to the extreme involved and committed private sector involvement in tourism. Hence, I find that responsible tourism does have immense scope for developing in our state, because it's a state with an urban population, a majority, and the need to experience rural life, the rural tourism and experiences are much more in this case. So I am sure that we are going to work along with this national policy. The state also has a policy which is quite consistent with this national policy, and I really don't foresee any issues. In fact, I am sure that this can work wonders for us.
We're beginning to have to wrap up. We've got a couple of minutes left. I'm being told it's been a great session and great engagement. We have indeed had quite a lot of questions from the floor, and I should apologize for not being able to get to all of them. But if I could just sum up as we close, it seems to me that the diversity of experience in India, the willingness to learn from what's worked in other places, to take some of it and apply it, but to recognize that India is an incredibly diverse destination with many different cultures and environments, even within a state. It's very important that tourism reflects that. I'm particularly taken, Vinod, with what you were saying about these PPCs, these public-private community partnerships, which will, I suspect, if that becomes a model which is used widely in India, I hope will be taken up around the world. But I'd like formally to thank you all for your time this morning. Thank you. You're all very busy people. I know that. I'm grateful to you for making an hour to sit with us and talk about the experience in India. I wish you well with it for the future, and I'm sure that we'll be inviting you to be on many more panels to talk about the different experiences that you have. But there's some extraordinary things been achieved already in India, and I think from what you're saying, we're going to see big growth in responsible tourism moving forward. What I'd also like just to remind everyone of is that the 20th anniversary of the Cape Town Declaration will come up in 2 years' time, and in November 2022, when I hope we'll all be able to meet in London, there'll be a big festival of responsible tourism looking at what's been achieved over the last 20 years around the world, but particularly in those leading destinations, those leading states around the world where so much progress has been made in Africa and India and in Latin America. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the audience for listening, and I hope you found it as enjoyable, as informing and as entertaining as I have. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you to each one
Thank
of you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Harold. It was a
My
wonderful
pleasure,
session,
Vinod.
Harold.